Hi, I'm Richard Karn, and you may have seen me on TV talking about the world's #1 expandable garden hose. Well, the brand new Pocket Hose Copperhead with Pocket Pivot is here, and it's a total game changer. Old-fashioned hoses get kinks and creases at the spigot, but the Copperhead's Pocket Pivot swivels 360 degrees for full water flow and freedom to water with ease all around your home. When you're all done, this rust-proof anti-burst hose shrinks back down to pocket size for effortless handling and tidy storage. Plus, your super light and ultra-durable Pocket Hose Copperhead is backed with a 10-year warranty. What could be better than that? I'll tell you what, an exciting exclusive offer just for you.
For a limited time, you can get a free Pocket Pivot and their 10-pattern sprayer with the purchase of any size Copperhead hose. Just go to getcopperhead.com. That's getcopperhead.com for your 2 free gifts with purchase. Getcopperhead.com.
Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details.
All right, welcome to your Thursday, and we will open the phone lines as we do each and every day today from 11 until 12, and hope to hear from many of you, as I'm sure that we will. The phone lines have been pretty busy this week, and council seems to be the focus of much of the conversation. And Regional Council has approved a motion aimed at finding ways to alleviate some of the financial pressures facing the municipality. The staff report includes several recommendations, including a review of services and having the CAO return to council with a corporate user fee policy and pricing strategy. Mayor Andy Fillmore put the motion forward this week. The report also asked the mayor to write a letter to the province requesting a formal review of service exchange and mandatory contributions, as well as a funding agreement that provides HRM with a share of HST revenue or equivalent ongoing funding. So the bottom line here, folks, is that the municipality is, like everybody else, strapped for cash, I would say at this point, and living beyond its means. And I think that I think a motion like this on the surface is a good one. I'm just not sure that council will have the fortitude to see it through and to make the tough decisions. So one of the things that I'm going to ask you to talk about, do you think this council iteration of council is capable of properly managing this city? That's a fundamental question. Is pragmatic decision making steering the ship? That is at the core of all of this. Pragmatic decision making, is it steering the ship, or is ideology and personal agendas dominating the direction of council? Because we have many people, I hear from many of you who suggest that that's the case. Look, like I always say, I want to hear from all sides in this. Maybe you like the direction council is taking, and you think that they're completely capable of making good decisions and of steering the ship. If that's the case, let me know. And conversely, if you don't, I want to hear from you as well. And also tied in with this, of course, a closed-door meeting monopolized the council meeting Tuesday, but during the break, Halifax Mayor Andy Fillmore scrummed with reporters on the hot topic of potential strong mayor powers. He said he hasn't made a formal request, but there have been informal conversations with the province on the priorities they share, including affordability, housing, congestion, and fiscal restraint. I would bet every dollar that I have that strong mayor powers are coming to HRM. I think it's a done deal. Fait accompli. I really do. I think you're going to see it this fall. And do you support that? Strong mayor powers, do you think that it's needed? Will it make council more effective? Will it result in better management of the city? Or do you think that is too much power for the mayor, who can override decisions and hire and fire staff unilaterally, from what I understand? Again, we'll have to see what the legislation looks like and what it includes and what it involves. But again, these are questions that I'm going to ask you to weigh in on that or lots of other things as well I've got in the pile, whatever is on your mind. Like always, during the open hour, we'd like to hear from you. Again, we'll take your calls from 11 until 12. The Toronto Blue Jays finally lost. It had to come to an end at some point, and I think the winning streak was 10 games, so quite a run, and the Blue Jays look to be heading into the All-Star break, which I hate the All-Star break because it's just I'm not a fan of any All-Star game, but in particular baseball. But anyway, the Blue Jays will head into the All-Star break in as good a position as they have been since they won the World Series back in the early 90s. So if that's a harbinger of things to come, well, we shall see. I don't think anybody's going to run away with the American League East at this point. I really don't. I think Tampa Bay, the Yankees are going to play better ball than they have, that's for sure. And the Blue Jays are going to struggle again. But they're putting wins in the bank, and that's what it's all about. So anyway, a little baseball as well. If you want to talk baseball, that's fine. You can do so. Blake Priddle is behind the glass today. Vanessa's away, so thanks to Blake and his work behind the glass, and he will be answering the phones today when you call us. All right, this story I saw on the CBC website, I'll read a bit of it. Nova Scotia is giving offshore petroleum development another try. The Joint Provincial Federal Offshore Energy Regulator announced Monday it's issuing a call for bids for offshore oil and gas exploration on 13 parcels totaling more than 3.3 million hectares. Nova Scotia Energy Minister Trevor Boudreau said it's part of the Houston government's goal of ramping up resource development. He said this seemed like a simple one to revisit given the province's history of offshore natural gas extraction. I reached out to Gretchen Fitzgerald about all this with Sierra Club Canada Foundation to talk about this, and Gretchen joins me on the show. Gretchen, welcome to the show. We appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thanks for reaching out, and thanks for catching the story.
Okay, so what are your thoughts, I guess, in general on this to start?
Well, initially it's like I feel like I'm talking to you 20 years ago. Yeah. We've talked for many years.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's really, really misleading of the minister and the government, the provincial government, to be claiming this is going to create any kind of A, opportunity, or B, stability for Nova Scotia. I mean, we're in a time of multiple crises. We know this. There's no time to waste in dealing with the U.S. administration. There's no time to waste in dealing with climate change. And there's definitely no time to waste in dealing with the affordability issues that people face. This decision will do nothing to confront these issues. And, I mean, I really would like to see leadership that will unite, champion solutions that will deal with all these things in one. And that, for us, would be, supporting and championing energy in communities, local solutions like solar, wind, energy storage, and the offshore wind potential for Nova Scotia and for Atlantic Canada. I just really wish that I didn't have to keep talking about the risks of oil drilling, but I guess we're still here, and the Premier and the government are listening to oil interests and not Nova Scotians.
Okay, a government release says there is a known reserve of at least 3.2 trillion cubic feet of offshore natural gas on the Scotian shelf, and this is obviously part of the reason why the government is hot on this idea. Do you think that that is low hanging fruit, or it's very attractive? Obviously, when thinking about, I guess, dealing with energy, and is it low hanging fruit? I guess is the question.
It's absolutely not low-hanging fruit for multiple reasons. First off, the timelines of development of these projects can be on the order of decades, whereas, we could be supporting communities, like I say, with local energy solutions that could be put up in a matter of years. It's definitely not low-hanging fruit from the point of view of protecting oceans and ocean industries such as the fishery, and protecting precious Sable Island. I haven't even talked about the fact that the leases include Sable Island and are right next to the Sable Island Gully as well. And they say there's about a 2-kilometer buffer zone around the island, but we all know when an accident happens out there can be massive implications. So definitely not low-hanging fruit in terms of threats to other industries and to the ecosystem in general. And, I guess I think the other piece is, they're claiming in that release that somehow this is going to help us achieve our reductions and get off coal here in Nova Scotia. I think there's many other alternatives aside from natural gas, burning natural gas, which, of course, is a greenhouse gas. It does increase global warming. The international community is very clear that we can't be drilling for more oil and gas and digging up more coal if we're serious about climate commitments. But also there are local impacts to burning coal on people's health. It creates pollution that's associated with respiratory diseases for people living around those plants, things like asthma. So calling this or thinking of this as some kind of low-hanging fruit is just myth building, both in terms of the logistics and the timelines, but also in terms of risks to the oceans and to people.
Okay, is it though? It is cleaner than coal. I mean, let's make that's a fact. Is that undisputed that it's a cleaner source than coal?
Well, when you look at fracked gas, now this probably would not be fracked gas coming from the offshore, although there is offshore fracking. They wouldn't have the same amounts of leaks as you would see from fracking gas, but it's still, Oil Change International, which is a global group that looks at greenhouse gas emission projections, is very clear that we cannot continue, the burning of natural gas or methane to produce electricity is not a clean energy source, and burning that gas will significantly contribute to climate change. And so it's not we're not at a point in our climate history where we can talk about relativism in terms of fossil fuels. I think we have to talk about shifting. And the cool thing is that the costs of those other energy sources keep going down with technological advancements, with greater knowledge of how to deploy them in better ways. So I think, there are solutions. And I feel this is a huge missed opportunity in terms of governmental resources and focus, where we should be really going whole hog on solutions that confront, the three crises we're facing, which is, the trade crisis, climate change, and the affordability crises.
Do you anticipate that there'll be companies stepping up and bidding for this exploration?
I sincerely hope not. Newfoundland and Labrador has done a couple call for bids the last few years and been unsuccessful. No one's sort of raised their hand. Of course, a couple of years ago, the Nova Scotia government and the federal government jointly decided to veto a call for bids. And, the subtext of that decision was we're looking at different energy sources, which was a smart decision in our view. And the fact that they've extended, created such a long timeline to see a response to this call for bids speaks to me a little bit of desperation. They want to give people almost a whole year to respond. Now, that said, I think strong message from, folks that we work with in the Offshore Alliance, which includes coastal community groups and the fishing industry. We've worked in alliance with them historically in the past. Will need to speak up very loudly to the oil industry should they want to be looking at these sites to speak to their concerns and know that it's not going to be a done deal, that there's going to be opposition, and this opposition has been successful in the past. We were successful in fighting oil and gas in the Gulf of St. Lawrence. And like I say, we saw the call for bids a couple of years ago vetoed as well.
Okay, the business model, the royalty structure, what are your thoughts on that? Is that overplayed, do you think, when it comes to the economic benefits for the province?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if you think back to the Sable Island days, I mean, you'd think, and partly this is, failure to get the maximum benefit from what is a limited resource in the past, but you'd think we'd be living high on the hog off that. And it didn't seem to pull. I'm sure there were economic benefits, but I think it's really overblown. And when you think holistically of the cost to people in terms of accelerated climate change, wildfires, heat, hurricanes, that kind of thing, then absolutely it's not worth the bang for the buck. And like I say, it's not like there aren't alternatives that actually could be creating local jobs, local benefits, and that, confront the climate crisis and the affordability issues as well.
Okay, offshore wind, can it coexist with offshore wind? The CBC story asked that question. What are your thoughts on that?
Like I said, our druthers would be that there is no new drilling. So I don't even want to contemplate that type of coexistence. I think it's completely unnecessary. I'm still quite hopeful that even if the government is showing some real desperation with this move, that the industry will see that this is not a good bet, and we won't have to go there. But yeah, I guess that's another factor. I think the thing that Nova Scotians should be concerned about is that your tax dollars and there's efforts going toward this non-starter industry when really it should be whole hog in supporting, like I say, solar, wind, and clean energy storage.
Okay, so is the main concern here the possibility of leaks or some issues at the drill site, or is it greenhouse gases, or is it a combination of both?
For me, it's all. I mean, my background is marine biology, and you have to remember the beginning phase of exploring for oil and gas is seismic blasting. Huge human-made noise under the ocean, huge impacts for whales and other ocean life that are in that environment. And like I say, these areas abut onto the Sable Island Gully, which is known to be the habitat for the northern bottlenose whale. And of course, we know the fate of the right whale is hanging by a thread. So that kind of loud, wide-scale impact on a marine ecosystem is of huge concern. And then, of course, there's the risk of a spill or an accident, and folks may not recall, but a few years ago, and these leases cover areas up to 4 kilometers down in the ocean. So extremely risky and dangerous if you're going to be trying to drill in that depth. But, there's other shallower areas, of course, included in the leases too. But folks should recall that there was a near miss with a 2-kilometer piece of pipe going within meters of a wellhead, and type of accident out there happening, it would be extremely hard to get a handle on it, especially in deep water. So any kind of blowout and spill. And then there's just the ongoing noise and of the drilling itself, of the ship traffic, that kind of thing. It's just a pervasive assault on ocean life. So that's huge for me. But then, I think we all know and acknowledge, and Canadians know, actually they've been polled recently saying they agree that Canada, 65% of Canadians agree that Canada should be investing in renewables and not in fossil fuels. So Canadians know this. So that climate change is a huge factor for all of our futures, and to be exasperating that problem through an industry that won't bring the local benefits that other industries could bring seems like a huge waste of time in a crisis, but just wrong-headed.
Gretchen, I appreciate your time. Thanks for doing this. We'll talk again.
Okay. Hopefully it'll be good news. Okay.
All right. Take care.
Thanks,
okay.
Todd.
Gretchen Fitzgerald, Sierra Club Canada Foundation. Police explanation warranted when it comes to a cop not showing up for the trial of a ex-Halifax Moosehead drunk driving, says Mad Canada CEO, who will join us when we come back. I saw this story in the Chronicle Herald. Halifax Regional Police owed the public an explanation for why an officer missed an impaired driving trial June 27th, resulting in charges against a former junior hockey star being dismissed. The CEO of Mothers Against Drunk Driving Canada says. Joining us to discuss all this is Steve Sullivan, who is the CEO of Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Steve, thanks for joining the show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, so give people the backstory, if you will, on this, please.
Yeah, so as I understand it, there was charges laid against this individual, and there was date set for trial, the person pled not guilty. And on the date of the trial, on the morning of the trial, the police officer who made the arrest didn't show up, and the Crown attorney was unable to reach the officer. And so, therefore, the Crown didn't feel that they could justifiably ask for a adjournment. And so they had to stay the charges. So the individual who remains, was never found guilty, the charges were all dropped.
Now, we're talking about Jordan Dumais, by the way, who was a member of the Halifax Mooseheads, a star, now playing in the NHL, I believe, or the AHL, either or both. So this vehicle was stopped by police March 1st, 2024 at around 2:20 a.m. When the officer who made the traffic stop failed to show up to testify at Dumais' trial. I'm reading the story in Halifax Provincial Court. The Crown attorney was unable, as you mentioned, to offer any evidence, and the charges were dismissed for want of prosecution. So, I mean, what happened here? I mean, I think that was it a logistics error? Was it he slept in? Was it what the hell happened here? I think we need to know this.
Yeah, and I think that's the big question. I mean, there could be a logical, reasonable explanation for what happened. Maybe the officer had a family emergency. Who knows? Maybe there was a problem. The subpoena wasn't delivered through the police internal system. Maybe the officer didn't show up for some reason. We know for some other reason. I guess the question is, I think, prosecutions are done in the name of the public and the name of the state. And so I think the public has a right to know what happened in this case. Again, it might not be anything serious. Maybe it's a problem within the internal system the Halifax Police Service has. But I think the public has a right to know what that is. And if there was a problem that can be fixed, that it's going to be addressed.
How common is this that cops don't show up and people get off because of that? How regularly does that happen?
Yeah, I mean, unless it's media, I don't know there's really a way to know. It's not something that I've heard before, not to say it hasn't happened, but I would suspect it's pretty rare, at least with no explanation. I mean, sometimes, as we said, some things come up, an officer can't make a court date, but there's an explanation. The Crown can then go to the judge and say, oh, Your Honor, the officer has a sickness in the family or a recent death or whatever the case may be. And so you can ask for an adjournment. I think in this case, the Crown just felt like, I don't have any reasonable explanation for this, so I can't ask for an adjournment. I think that's quite rare.
Well, at the core of this, of course, is that this is a very high-profile case, and it leads people to speculate that perhaps this was intentional, or again, we don't know this. Nothing's been proven, but again, with a vacuum for a reason here, or of information, people will fill that vacuum, as we know with conspiracies and speculation. And that is more of a reason why they should be forthcoming in what the heck happened here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, exactly. And as you mentioned, this is a high-profile case with an individual who's known, obviously, in the community. And so the question naturally would be, was this done because of who the accused was? I mean, I don't know what the reasons are. I find it hard to believe that police would go to the trouble of laying the charges, and then there's going to be a prosecution, and then at some point later they decide that because of who this individual is, they're just not going to show up. But having said that, if people don't know the reasons, and again, one hopes there's a logical explanation, but if people don't know the reasons, then of course they're going to speculate, and given the high-profile nature of the individual, people are going to draw conclusions.
Would it be public information who the police officer was who made the arrest?
I suspect that going through the Crown's office could find out, or the police service would be able to release that. I don't know. Nothing's been reported publicly yet, but I don't think that would be secret. Again, I think that it's just really incumbent upon the Halifax Police Service to offer a fulsome explanation to folks, so they can rest assured that if there is some kind of problem, that it's being addressed.
Okay, Marla McGinnis, HRP's Manager of Public Relations and Communication, said later that the force was investigating why the officer did not attend court. And it said there is an expectation that officers take their duty to appear at court very seriously. The officer had a duty to appear in court last week and did not. There are consequences under the Police Act that are now being explored. What are your thoughts on that response?
Yeah, again, I mean, obviously, if there's an explanation why the officer couldn't, again, family emergency, something happened, then I think that's reasonable. And Halifax Police Service can address that. If there was some other reason, I'm just going to make something up, officer slept through the alarm, then that's obviously a performance issue that needs to be addressed with that particular officer. So I am glad that they're doing an investigation. I do hope that the results of that investigation, to the extent possible, will be made public again, so people have at least some understanding of what happened here and that it won't happen again.
I mean, it could be an embarrassment for the police officer himself, right, or herself, whoever made the arrest.
Yeah, and if it is something, again, I'm not suggesting this is the situation, but if it's something I just slept through my alarm, that is embarrassing. That is obviously for that officer and needs to be dealt with in terms of performance, but at least alleviates the concerns that there's some greater reason behind all this, that it's, we're all humans, we make mistakes. I think those things can be dealt with.
Okay, Steve, we'll follow up on this. Thank you for doing it. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, take care. Steve Sullivan, CEO of Mothers Against Drunk Driving Canada. What Canadians' options are as companies push to return to office. We'll discuss this when we come back. As the number of in-office days is set to increase for many of Canada's hybrid workers, return-to-office mandates are setting the stage for tension between employees and employers. Remote and hybrid work spurred by the COVID-19 pandemic is giving way to arrangements more closely aligned with traditional office norms now that labour market conditions have swung in companies' favours. Some of Canada's largest financial service firms, including several of the big banks, have said they will shift to 4 in-office days a week beginning in the fall. Joining me to discuss all of this is Philippe de Villers, the chair of the Chartered Professionals in Human Resources Canada. Philippe, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Todd. Great to be here.
All right, so why is this such a controversial issue?
Well, it is because since the beginning of the pandemic, employees have responded present for the businesses. They worked from home largely in the service sector, and whenever it was possible. They did deliver as well, and throughout the past years, employees were hired with really clear conditions that they could work remotely. So now the switch comes a bit as a surprise to them, and they need to readjust. And for some of them who live far from the office, it's becoming increasingly difficult to be present in person at work.
Okay, so when it comes to options and repercussions, what is at play here when it comes to agreements, I guess, between employers and employees? Because it really comes down to kind of the way this originally was rolled out and what the wording was.
Absolutely, and part of it is, for employees that have been in the business for quite some time, it's a bit different because obviously work conditions change all the time and you sort of understand it and it goes as a transition. But the growing concerns are for people who have been hired with specific skills, who live very far from the office. So oftentimes we see policies put in place in those workplaces that have different conditions for different group of people. We can think of IT, oftentimes where you're looking for specialists in, let's say, cybersecurity and things like that. That is tougher to find. So oftentimes businesses will need to adjust to keep that top talent in, even if they're not coming in as work as frequently as other type of labor.
Okay, why do companies want people back in the office? Is it because they feel that they're more productive, or what's at play here?
Yeah, I think that's the key question here, because my general feeling, and we've heard that quite a bit when the remote working took place during COVID. A lot of CEOs of businesses were really uncomfortable with that because they felt that if they were not actually physically seeing their workers, they might not work as hard as when they were physically seeing them, which has been debunked, by the way. Many studies showed that, on the contrary, people tend to work more since they travel less. So there's a bit of that. However, on the HR pure perspective, it has also been shown that people who don't work physically together, in time, it shows on team spirit, on collaboration, on team morale as well. So I think this is where the sort of hybrid work becomes important, and having a right balance between, okay, we can work together as a team. We have the sort of physical context there, but at the same time, we're saving time whenever we can in terms of commuting.
Yeah, for sure. So when it comes to the commuting and all of that goes and congestion, and we talk a lot about that. To me, this is contradictory to efforts to ease congestion, in particular in downtown areas. What are your thoughts?
Oh, it absolutely is, and we see that throughout the country. I mean, city streets are really empty on Fridays and on Mondays, but then suddenly on the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, it becomes crazy. And more than that, it just feels that sometimes we're putting a lot of pressure on employees, so we're giving them flexibility, yes, but at a certain point. So then we're expecting them to be at work at 8 a.m., but then they have to leave 2 hours before. And yes, it was like that before, but with the pandemic, people really moved away from city centers quite a bit. So we have that really commuting crisis in place, and there's no easy way out of it, because now, as you said in your intro, the sort of pendulum has swung back to the employers with the economic uncertainty and all that. So it's just more pressure for employees right now. Sadly.
Might it be that these companies have this real estate and they have leases or they own the brick and mortar, and they want to they have to justify it? It's an expense, and not having people in the office, it might seem like a waste of money. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, we're hearing that here and there. I think in reality, a lot of businesses have sort of adapted with the pandemic, moving to smaller leases, less square footage. For that specific reality. So I don't think they want people in just to justify the brick and mortar investment. I feel that it's really more for collaboration and just maybe a general feeling of, okay, I see them, I feel that I can control them better, which is not true, but again, it's something we tend to hear quite a bit right now.
Is that kind of an old school thought? Is this a generational thing?
I think it may be in part, but also it's just a general feeling that when you don't see people, you don't understand what they work. So by default, you may think they're not working. But again, this is just a question of how you manage your business, because businesses that are managed around KPIs, that have good metrics, good cybersecurity and stuff. I mean, people who would not be working, either they're remote or at your workplace, you would know instantly. And that's sort of more how businesses, we HR professionals, we encourage them to deal with their people, give them clear objectives, be clear in the measurements, and wherever they work, you're going to know if they're doing their job or not.
Work from home is not for everybody. I think that's safe to say, right?
Oh, absolutely. That's absolutely true. I mean, myself, I don't like working from my own place. I work in the office 5 days a week, but I'm the only one in my team. The rest of them are working much better from home because they can concentrate better and they're good at it. So I think it's important to give the flexibility to your employees to have a work arrangement that really puts the focus on their individual performance. And usually when you have good policies in place, good and honest conversations with your staff, you should be able to strike that right level of balance.
The public sector and its battle, is that kind of the leading the charge on this, or what are your thoughts on the public sector component?
Public sector is complicated because you've got collective agreements in there. So it's really complicated. My feel is that the banking sector is leading the charge there. They were the first to bring back people full time at work in those head offices downtown Montreal and Toronto, and we're seeing a lot of businesses follow that. And although the HR associations across the country are sort of putting a lot of effort on striking that right sense of balance, we're sort of seeing the reverse right now as employers have more control over things right now as the economic conditions are mostly uncertain. We've seen the unemployment rise. So I think right now employers feel they have the leverage to sort of put the conditions in place they wish or they think are the best, and employees sadly right now need to adapt. And this is where HR professionals come into play to make sure we sort of we maximize the interests of the employers while not losing all the gains we had during the pandemic with the remote working.
Okay, when it comes to exceptions that may be made for people based on family status, is that inherently kind of unfair? Because somebody might say, "Look, I don't have any kids. I'm single, but I still don't want to have to drive and commute, and I'm more effective at working from home, and it suits my work-life balance." So are exceptions inherently kind of unfair?
Yeah, that's a very valid point. However, I want to say we never really and these may exist, but I have not seen any workplace policies that have exceptions based on your family status. Because to your point, it would be discriminatory. What we've seen more is more exceptions based on worker types. So, for example, obviously people who do service in person, cannot access remote working. And in the same fashion, people in the IT world, for all sorts of reasons, may be more prone to have remote working. So if there's exceptions being made on the family status, those would be one-offs. And then sometimes the request comes from the rest of the team saying, "Hey, look, we know that person has a tough personal situation. Can we do something to accommodate that person because we feel for her and she's bringing, or for her or for him for that matter, and we feel we want to keep that person." So, but those would be more ad hoc situations, not really planned in the policies per se.
Where do you think this is going in the years to come? Where do you think, if you would project out to 10 years or 20 years out, where do you think this is going to go?
You're not going to like my answer, but it's going to depend on the economic conditions. My feeling is if there's a big recession coming in and lots of economic shock waves, we're going to see more and more work from the workplace. However, if we continue seeing labor shortage in specific areas, knowledge jobs, things like that, I think hybrid work is there to stay, because truth is, in terms of objective performance, it has shown that it was good for performance of individuals and of businesses, and it really helps strike a good workplace and personal life balance. So I think a lot of it is going to depend on the economic future of the country.
Philippe, good chat. I appreciate it. Thanks for doing this today.
Thanks, Todd. It was my pleasure.
All right, take care. Philippe de Valère, Chair of the Chartered Professionals in Human Resources Canada. Environmental groups warn against repealing federal electric vehicle mandates. That when we come back. The environmental think tank is warning the federal government against repealing its electric vehicle mandate, instead suggesting that politicians should be helping to put more EVs on the road. Rachel Doran, Executive Director, Clean Energy Canada, joined us to talk about all of this. Rachel, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time.
Hi, Todd. Thanks for having me.
All right. So there's been nothing official when it comes to the government, when it comes to repealing this as of yet. We know that the vehicle manufacturers have made a request. So what do we know right now about this?
Yeah. So, maybe for one, this federal sales EV availability standard actually hasn't even started yet. It's supposed to come into play in force in model year 2026. So right now it's really just early action credit stage. So this policy was really designed to help make sure that there are a predictable and increasing number of vehicles available to Canadians. And in places where this policy's been in play for a while, it's actually shown that it incentivizes automakers to get more models available at more price points to the Canadians that want them. And there are still Canadians that want them. When you ask kind of nationally, 45% of people, so nearly half, are still saying they're inclined to get an electric vehicle for their next vehicle. And that's higher in places where there have been this good policies in place from government for a while. So places like Quebec and BC, it's over half. And when you ask younger people, you can get up, like in Metro Vancouver or Greater Toronto area, and you ask people under 30, you start getting up to 70%. So, there's definitely still people out there who want one, and this policy was designed to help them get the kinds of vehicles they can afford and want. And so from our view, while the world's going a bit topsy-turvy, there may be room for adjustment here, but the call from automakers for a wholesale cancellation of this policy is really fighting a policy that was designed for the consumer.
Is what's happening in the U.S., though, really kind of driving this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we've seen a government south of the border who's clearly very pro anything to do with drill, baby, drill. And so, with a lot of the EV backlash, that we hear in Canada is just resonating from, listening to what's happening in the U.S. What we might not hear as much about is what's happening in the rest of the world. So last year in the world entirely, more than 1 in 5 vehicles sold were electric. This year, electric cars are on track to make up more than 1 in 4 vehicles sold globally. And that's not just it's not just China, but it's not even, places with lots of money like the European Union. These are emerging markets like Thailand and Brazil, where they have a lot of models available. This is what people are choosing because the technology is just more efficient and it saves money to plug into electricity versus gas over time.
Okay, recent data from Stats Canada suggests EVs accounted for just 7.53% of all new vehicles sold in April. That number is much below the global trend. Why is that?
So what we've seen in the past year is certainly, in addition to the kind of uncertainty where, people may be holding off just major purchases, wondering what's happening with prices and other pieces, we also saw the federal and Quebec rebate paused in 2025, and BC paused its rebate in May. And so, there's been some signal from the federal government this is coming back. And so, and it did come back in Quebec. So drivers may also be holding off making some of these decisions, trying to see, will they be able to get the benefit of an incentive if this all comes back? Maybe they don't want to be purchasing them right now. So, I think there's certainly some uncertainty out there driving this change. But yeah, we saw last year in Canada sales closer to 15%.
Okay, so when it comes to price point, what is the average price point for somebody in the market to buy a new EV here in Canada?
So the difference between an EV and a fossil fuel-powered car in Canada really isn't that big off the start. It really depends on the model or which ones you're looking at. That said, I think a lot of people, when you ask them what they're willing to spend for a new car, they start saying something close to $40,000. Now, in the European Union, there are 17 electric vehicles under the price point of $47,000 Canadian last time we looked. In Canada, there are maybe 6, and they're mostly plug-in hybrids with electric ranges around 50 kilometers. So we're not getting all of the models at all of the price points that people want. But I think when we went and studied last year, how long it takes to pay off these vehicles, with a rebate, some of the cars, as soon as you applied that, were cheaper off the lot. So if the federal government chooses to reintroduce those, there's a lot of cars at very similar price points as soon as you apply the rebate. And what was the case in every single vehicle pairing we looked at was that over the lifetime of your car, all of them paid off and were saving money. And that's because at the average cost of electricity last year, you're paying about 40 cents a liter, equivalent to power your car. So it's, pretty easy to see how that really saves up over time.
Okay, can the government protect the automotive industry and the EV industry here in Canada while allowing affordability to be at play here? Because we know that the Chinese EVs, if not for this 100% tariff, would be much more affordable for people, and I would think a good option. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we think, obviously these are two really important objectives, and we've been a big champion of Canada building out its EV supply chain. We have the critical minerals, we have the innovation. This is a great way to boost what was otherwise kind of a declining industry and really anchor this in Canada. That said, the government doesn't just govern for industry, it's also for people. So trying to make sure that we're balancing policies between that goal of building up domestic production while at the same time helping consumers. We think a policy package, the EV availability standard is just one piece of that. So that's one piece to help, really get predictability, make it easy to make charging investments, make more models available. In addition to that, the government needs to reintroduce rebates. And we would suggest a more moderate approach to tariffs. So something like the EU did where they applied, they still have tariffs to try to protect their domestic industry, but they're not 100%. And they are a little more flexible, would allow a little bit of competition into the market. In addition, applying the EU transportation standards would allow vehicles that are approved for roads in the European Union to just come straight into Canada. that's going to help get some models that aren't Chinese starting to enter our market and really trigger that kind of competition and energy around the electric vehicles that we know is going to be there because of that unmet demand.
Is range anxiety still an issue?
I think anybody transitioning to an electric vehicle has, reasonable concerns. And so I guess what I would say is a few things here. The average electric vehicle these days goes over 400 kilometers, closer to 480 kilometers. So when you start thinking about road trips, that takes you pretty far to a cottage, et cetera, without ever having to plug into the public charging network. And the public charging network is improving every year. And something like the EV availability standard helps ensure that they know there'll be demand out there and the charging network can continue to expand. But I think, so many people who are driving an EV these days are spending 80% of their charging at home plugged in their driveway. I think, we still have some work to do to make sure that's accessible for people living in apartments and condos. But when you look at just the satisfaction level, when you ask people who own an EV, I think the last poll was 85% of them said that they would purchase another one. So they've really found that, while there is some fear in transitioning to this, that they've actually been really happy with the results. And that applies to their friends, too. Again, those numbers of who's interested in an electric vehicle, if you know someone who has one, you are 70% inclined to go and get one on average. So that's when we polled across the country. So just having a chance to kind of experience and see how EVs are working really helps dispel some of these concerns that people may have heard just, kind of through the grapevine or the news in general.
Rachel, I appreciate your time. Thanks for doing this.
Really appreciate the time to chat with you, Todd. Have a great rest of your day.
All right, take care. Rachel Doran, Executive Director, Clean Energy Canada. What is on your mind today? The way to reach us, of course, is 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. What would it take to get you in an EV? Might be something that you can talk about. Again, 902-405-6000. Of course, Regional Council. News concerning its CAO is going to step down and resign after 25 years working for the municipality. Regional Council also has approved a motion aimed at finding ways to alleviate some of the financial pressures facing the municipality. What do you think of that? Whatever else you've got in your mind, the way to reach us is 902-405-6000. Your calls when we come back. All right, taking your calls. Way to reach us, 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. What is on your mind today? Look, folks, an interesting chat that I just had with Rachel Doran with Clean Energy Canada. An environmental group is warning the federal government against repealing its electric vehicle mandate, instead suggesting that politicians should be helping to put more EVs on the road. What are your thoughts on this, folks? Again, if I were a betting man, I would bet that the Prime Minister will repeal this based on the conversation that he had with vehicle manufacturers recently who are imploring him to do so. They say that it's just not realistic. And in theory, there's probably not a business model based on what's going on in the United States where they're moving away from this. I don't think the economy of scale is there to warrant it, to force vehicle manufacturers by 2035 to be 100% producing EVs. To me, that's not realistic. That's not a commentary in general on EVs, but I just think it's the economic reality. Now, if the United States did not have, of course, their direction led by Donald Trump, which is, we know, pro internal combustion engine big time, and they were scaling up EV in the way the trajectory which they were on when Joe Biden and the Democrats were running things, then sure, I could see that it could be justified. But based on what's going on the climate, economic climate here in North America, I don't see how you can force Canadian manufacturers to produce 100% EVs by 2035 and have a business model for an already struggling industry. We know that it's struggling big time. So what are your thoughts on this, folks? What would it take to get you into an EV? What would the price point need to be? And Chinese EVs, of course, there's 100% tariff on Chinese EVs, and these would be the most affordable option. And the Chinese have built, from what I have researched and heard, build a pretty good quality vehicle when it comes to an EV. So perhaps opening up the market for Chinese EVs and eliminating that big tariff and bringing the price point way down, that would be an incentive, I'm sure. Well, what would it take to get you into an EV? Something that you can talk about. Also, of course, Regional Council in the news. A Halifax Chief Administrative Officer is retiring. Kathy O'Toole made the announcement yesterday after 25 years of public service. O'Toole has served as CAO since January of 2023. He is expected to continue with her role until October to assist the Mayor and Regional Council in the development of a transition plan for the municipality. Also, when it comes to council, a busy week at City Hall. Regional Council has approved a motion aimed at finding ways to alleviate some of the financial pressures facing the municipality. The staff report includes several recommendations, including a review of services and having the CAO return to council with a corporate user fee policy and pricing strategy. Mayor Andy Fillmore put the motion forward this week. So, I guess, to expand on all of this, do you think that this council is capable of properly managing the city's fiscal matters? Bottom line, is it governed by pragmatic decision-making? Is pragmatic decision-making steering the ship when it comes to decisions at City Hall? Or is ideology and personal agenda dominating the direction of council? Again, I hear that a lot from people who call the show, but this is an opportunity for you to, if you want to defend council, maybe you like the decisions the council is making. Maybe you believe in this council. What are your thoughts on this or anything else you've got in your mind? Again, the way to reach us, of course, is 902-405-6000. Let's kick it off with Ed. Hello, Ed.
Good morning. Good morning.
Hi there.
Regarding council, I think we're very fortunate in this city to have Andy Fillmore as mayor because I don't pay very close attention to politics, but he had a very sensible motion regarding these bike lanes, and I think he made perfect sense, which appealed to me because of the money constraints and the traffic constraints. And it was disappointing to see other people on the councilors that kind of really picked up the fight and went in 180 degree different direction instead of looking at the practicality of it all. And to the mayor's credit, he didn't get combative. He I see a person that's really willing to work with people. We should be thankful that we have good people in place. So that's my comment on that. I did call regarding these EV, the EV lady.
Yeah.
There's two things that people and the government and a lot of people are not taking into consideration with EVs. One, we compare Canada to countries in Europe, and there's countries that have the landmass of Nova Scotia, and they have more population than all of Canada. Well, EVs would work a lot better in Europe. Our population is quite spread out, and my daughter was part of she went to McGill there a couple years ago, and she was working on public policy and procedure, and one of the projects was how to help people out in Iqaluit. And the general mindset is everybody should electrify transportation. And they looked at the situation in Iqaluit, and it'll never be electrified because they produce electricity with diesel generators, and there's not enough electricity for the lights and the schools and everything up there. So that's just not going to happen in the north. And I don't know when the transition line of practicality of EVs in the north. For instance, an electric vehicle, when it's really, really cold out, it's using its battery power to stay warm so it can be driven. So after a short period of time, it can't be driven, where a fossil fuel vehicle, it can be stored and then started and used. But that's just one small thing. The other thing that they're not taking into consideration is if everybody plugged their car in and used electricity to power their car, there would be very little road tax. Like right now on electricity, I don't believe there's any road tax being paid.
Yeah.
So if you gave the same equation to gasoline vehicles and you took all of the tax off of gasoline, look how cheap it would be to operate vehicles. So as time moves on, they're going to take away the tax base that pays for a lot of roads.
Well, I'm sure, Ed, that they'll figure out a way to get the road tax through the energy consumption they'll figure out a way to do it, because EVs are heavier, of course, and I would think would be more difficult for road construction, road repair, more potholes and all that. I'm quite certain that they would figure out a way to tax you when it comes to user fee for the roads. That's my take, Ed.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and there goes the deal on electricity. You know.
Yeah, exactly. The
so
power rates will skyrocket like you won't believe when this rolls out.
There isn't. I've been involved in heating and ventilation, air conditioning, heat pump sales and stuff, and there's not enough grid capacity right now. Like for instance, in one day in February of 2023, Nova Scotia ran out of power. They didn't have enough power.
Yeah.
They had rolling blackouts.
Yeah.
And that's not, that's a fact. So where is the extra capacity to, going to come from overnight? And so I think what'll happen is we get closer to the deadline. The holes in the whole idea will get bigger, and they'll probably have to.
I think the mandate to be scrapped, and I think sooner than later. That's my take. Ed, thanks for the call, though. I appreciate it, pal.
Have a great day.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. David, hello.
Hi, Todd. Yeah, I wanted to comment on your previous hour guest when you're talking about natural gas and stuff like that. But yeah, just briefly on the electric vehicles, it's something I've talked about before. Before we start forcing electrification, like we should wait until all vehicles are hybrids before forcing electrification. And there's no reason that we shouldn't just mandate all new vehicles produced are hybrid vehicles, because, they would reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 30%, but they would also be saving 30% in fuel costs, which, on a societal level, if we reduce we use 30% less gas, well, that's a huge benefit. But it's basically something that can be done for free with no cost, because hybrids actually save more than their additional purchase price. There's no reason not to. Just talking about the natural gas and stuff like that. I mean, your previous guest, she raised a lot of good points and stuff about the effects of, drilling offshore on marine life. Her background, she said, was a marine biologist. So I guess what I question is what sort of detailed understanding does she have of energy production and energy policy that would allow her to sort of comment in any sort of substantive way? And I think that's too often the problem, that we're not hearing from the power engineers, the electrical engineers, the people who really understand this on a nuanced level, the economists. We're sort of hearing from people on the periphery who have sort of other concerns, marine life, whatever, very legitimate, but don't necessarily understand all the intricacies of the sort of electrical system. So, I mean, yeah, I'm talking about alternatives. Yeah, we have wind power and all that stuff for sure, but only 20% of societal electricity, total societal energy use is electricity. So, I mean, you can completely clean the electricity grid, and you've only really solved like a very, very small problem of the whole problem. But the sort of thing is, with offshore wind and all that stuff. So like that means we need grid scale battery storage, but we also need batteries for electric vehicles. And then we also need batteries for, residential buildings for solar panels and all that stuff. So where are all the batteries going to come from? Because that's like the critical bottleneck in supply production, for electric vehicles and stuff. So in contrast, natural gas, you have the storage reliability, you can provide your extra energy in the winter when you need it and stuff like that. So, but not only that, I mean, natural gas is a cleaner fuel source than coal, but when you sort of use it with things like combined heat and power, so you capture the waste heat produced in the electrical generating process, and you're fueling that generating process by natural gas instead of coal, you actually achieve 75% emissions reductions versus a centralized power plant. So, I mean, and this is the kind of stuff they've been doing in Europe for, 50, 100 years. And this is how all electricity was sort of produced in the, the beginning. But, I mean, yeah, there's sort of other things as well, too. You can get natural gas heat pumps. And just like a natural gas furnace is about 90% efficient anyway, and then if you have a natural gas heat pump, you get about another 30% equivalent efficiency boost. But the other thing is that they don't use refrigerants, which are very bad for the atmosphere in terms of causing global warming. The average refrigerant in your heat pump is about 800 times worse than CO2 in terms of producing global warming. And so, I mean, when that stuff escapes, then it's, obviously it's very bad and sort of negates some of the benefits that you'd be hoping to get from that. But the other thing as well, too, like basically with all the natural gas we use, we could be getting our refrigeration for free because the reason is the gas, when it's delivered to your home, your business, institution, or whatever, it's compressed. You burn it, it uncompresses, and then, goes up your chimney or whatever and stuff. But basically what you could do first is pass that gas through a refrigerating unit, expand it, it draws the heat out of that environment, produces the cooling effect. But what's also good is that when you go subsequently burn that gas to produce your heat, electricity, whatever, all of the sort of heat that is absorbed in that refrigeration stage is then vented out of the exhaust pipes, so you don't need your sort of cooling fans on your condensers and stuff like that. So there's just there's so much that we could be doing in terms of just reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. And I think the thing is we need to remember that fossil fuels, quote unquote, aren't the enemy. It's greenhouse gas emissions. So really what we could be doing is finding the ways to sort of reduce those and continue to use the natural gas. But the problem is if we sort of get this mentality that, we got to, stop all fossil fuels now. Well, we're just not going to be able to do it, but we're actually going to make getting to that point of reducing, our greenhouse gas emissions to a sort of environmentally sustainable level, it's actually going to make it a lot more difficult. So I think the problem with a lot of this debate is it's sort of like, saying things like, get off that natural gas now, get off oil and gas now. It's kind of an article of faith. It's something that you say to sort of prove to the other people who think like you that, yeah, you're a good person, you're on side. And it's kind of like Donald Trump and the election steal. Like, you might deep down in your heart realize that, yeah, the election wasn't stolen, but just saying it, that doesn't matter, right? You just say it to sort of, I don't know, maybe it makes yourself feel good, but you sort of prove to the other people around you that, you're on their side, you're part of the team kind of thing. So, I mean, as much as the blame, we could put on large corporate interests, lobby groups and stuff, I think sort of the environmental lobby also shares a great deal of blame as well, too, because there's sort of opinions on what's good for the environment, what's good for society and achieving these goals.
Okay, David, I'm gonna have to wrap it up. Thanks for the call, though, pal. You gave a lot of information there in a short amount of time. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. Right
okay,
on.
Take care. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, taking your calls, 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Craig, hello.
Hey, how you doing, Todd?
Well, you?
Good. Talking about the council, people ought to step back and say, wait a minute now, these people just got elected in. Let's let them do the job that we elected them to do. It's going to take some time. There's going to be a lot of problems, a lot of things that they're going to have to address. And I'll tell you, it's not going to be easy. They're talking about shortfalls and money and there's a lot of stuff. But let's allow the council the chance to do the job that we elected them to do. But right now, we're all jumping up and down and, no, I don't like this, don't like that, don't like this. Well, the thing is, let's see what they can do. I think this is what I'm saying.
Okay, let me ask you this, Craig. Do you think that this council is making decisions based on pragmatism and logic, or is it ideology and personal agenda dominating the direction of council?
Again, I can't say. All I can say is that they have a job to do, and they have to do it. Now, I'll tell you, if they don't, the people of the city will let them know one way or another. But I think, there may be some egos and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, there's always has been, always will be. But again, let's allow them to see what they're going to do, how they are going to address problems, the financial thing, and, all this stuff. So then we can sit there and say, well, this is wrong or that's wrong. But I think, there are some people that have got their own, their agenda and their own this and own that. But that's always been a talk.
Yeah, that's true.
Doesn't matter what council was there. They all there's people there that have their own agenda and try to push their own thing through. But again, I think in this day and age that we live in, there's a lot of problems, a lot of stuff that's going to be facing HRM and a lot of big stuff. And I think those are the things that they have to pay attention to and try to fix.
Okay,
but
great.
Again, not going to be easy.
Okay, thanks for the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. Jim, hello.
Good morning, Todd. How you doing?
I'm well, you?
Second call this week.
Yeah, that's good, though. I always like to hear from you.
Thanks, buddy. Listen, I forgot to mention yesterday when we were talking about the counselors.
Yeah.
And would you please correct me if I'm wrong? It seems to me that I'll say it's Sam Austin because I'm not sure because he supported Way Mason during our mayor candidate election. And I think he had mentioned, and maybe it was somebody else, but I'll zero in on him. I think he had mentioned when he talked about the mayor getting stronger powers, I think he had mentioned that Mayor Fillmore didn't really get a big majority anyway, so he doesn't have as much support or a mandate as he might think he does. Do you remember something like that?
I don't. No, I don't.
Okay, well, I'll put it out there because I tried to confirm it yesterday, but anyway, I'm pretty sure he said something like that. Anyway, the mayor did get 42-point-something% of the vote, for mayor, which was it's not a huge majority, but it's certainly a decent one for a mandate. So, and then I was thinking, well, if the province decides that the council is not working as well as it should be, they can easily step in and do what they want because they are, overall responsible for the governments of Nova Scotia when it comes to municipalities. Mm-hmm. So they have the authority to do that. In giving Mayor Fillmore the possibility of some additional powers, one thing that I hope happens is that the mayor will be able to then bring his budget that he presents before council, and I hope that it's going to include the follow-up to the photo radar stuff, the red light radar and the strategic locations of photo radar in the neighborhoods because, Todd, I'm out there all the time. And virtually, I'll make a statement because it's probably not scientifically true, but generally speaking, there's hardly any enforcement in HRM anymore when it comes to traffic. Mm-hmm. And most people are driving from one end to the next. Not all, but a large amount of people that I see are driving in the city as if they have no respect for anybody else. If I had a ticket book, I'd be busy from sun up till sundown in a ghost car. I mean, red lights and changing lanes in front of people. And the city's just gone wacko with the way things are happening. So I hope that if the mayor gets the additional powers, something like that will be able to come forward at council, and they won't have to spend 2 or 3 years arguing about it. My next comment is in regards to the EVs you're talking about.
Yeah.
I have a hybrid, and I've had a hybrid. It's a secondhand hybrid. It's a 21 Camry. Excuse me. And I had that and it had 12,000 kilometers on it when I got it. It's got a lot more now, but it certainly has saved me gas, particularly in the city. So I don't think that gas cars are going to be eliminated by 2035. I think that's almost impossible. But I think that the hybrid and the EVs will come on eventually. The charging stations for a full EV vehicle, we don't have enough. But Europe's gone crazy with EV cars. Okay, that's Europe. But I think the way to go will be hybrids, and I think that you'll see that. But I agree that they probably won't meet the target date. I think it's 2035 for no gas engines. 2035.
Yeah, 2035.
Yeah, I don't think that's.
Well, that's going to be scrapped. Really. That's going to be scrapped. I predict. I would bet any amount of money that'll be done and in pretty short fashion as well, Jim.
Yeah, and I agree with it. And I have one other comment. Kathy O'Toole, is she retiring?
Yes.
Oh, our loss. Kathy has been around for, I think, what? Geez, I was there, I think.
25 years. She was there. 25 years. She's been working for
so she was there when I was there. Yeah, and she's an excellent city manager, a very, very intelligent, compromising person. So it's our loss. So
I would imagine that it's more than a stressful job, right? Obviously, I would think that job would be intensely stressful.
Well, like some of the mayors that are in other cities in the States, they're the city manager plus the mayor. Just think what they go through.
Yeah, that's right.
But the new power for the city manager, I understand, one of those might be that the mayor can appoint his city manager himself.
Yeah. Hire and fire certain staff members would be part of the expanded powers for sure.
Well, that's going to be interesting to see if that happens. But I think council still will be able to have, I hope they have, some type of veto, but he does need more powers to get things moving. So I'm going to keep pushing for Andy to get those powers, and I'll do it through the provincial government.
Okay, Jim, appreciate the call as always.
Take care.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, taking your calls, 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Dave, hello.
Yes, good morning, Todd. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
Just a couple of your hot topics here. Of course, bike lane seems to be endless topic of discussion. And I just, with the bike lanes, what I've learned, Todd, over the years is there are small lobbyist groups that are very powerful. And you can see that with many projects, whether they're environmental groups or but they're very powerful. They organize, they demonstrate, and they get out there. Maybe they've got a lot of time on their hands, but I don't think the majority of the people don't agree with them, I do believe. But the majority of the people don't seem to have that kind of time to get out there and demonstrate with signs. And some of them will even go to the extreme where they will go to homes, of politicians and what have you, sadly, restaurants, and they can make a lot of noise. So I think small lobbyist groups have a lot of power, and I think that's the case with the bike lanes. And I think the majority of us Todd, I've listened to this for weeks, periodically, and it's the bike lanes. And $100 million is a lot of money. And I don't think it really represents all the people. I mean, you got people now commuting into the city from beyond, from Elmsdale, Enfield, and it's just our suburbs are growing outside as the city explodes. So that's my take on. There's a lot of activists, and good for them. I'm not saying right or wrong, but I'm just saying they're very active, and they can be very problematic with councillors and politicians. And I think they take note of that, and I think truly that's my opinion on that. Now, when it comes to EVs, Todd, I think we have to realize that we are powered up by Tufts Cove, and even Tim Houston said when I was discussing with him, where does that electricity get electrified at Tufts Cove? What powers up electricity here in our city? He said it was coal and mostly natural gas. And that natural gas, by the way, folks, is coming from the United States. And our natural gas comes from the United States solely from the United States. So we have to realize when we're plugging in to our EVs and we're thinking we're doing a world of good, well, really, we're just drawing more fossil fuel. And this city is growing like stink, as you know, Todd.
Yeah.
And the demands on the grid are greater than ever. And should we continue down this path, and EVs do take power. They need a lot of power.
Yeah.
I see people tapping into our building with their own little gadgets and drawing energy. And we could become a third world problem here with brownouts, because we're already suffering blackouts, power outages due to whatever. And you can look all around us and see the development here, and we're powering up from natural gas and coal in the city.
Yeah.
I don't think we're getting a lot of green energy, maybe a little nuclear from New Brunswick. I'm not too sure. And maybe, but I think other than that, we're getting our...
I think the majority of the green energy comes from Newfoundland and Churchill Falls from that subsea cable. I think that is the primary source of green energy. at this point, Dave?
A little bit of hydro, I think. If you're talking about the cable there, yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the percentage, but I think it's a little more than a little bit. I think it's a significant amount of the green energy that we do get comes from that source.
Which would probably be under 20%. I would say
something like that. Something like that.
Maybe less. Yeah. And I don't want to rain on everybody's parade. And quite frankly, I'm not ready to go EV myself, just because I think the unpredictability of what's going on around the world. And I think Trump opened up the door for fossil fuel. He says, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
But we're keeping fossil fuel vehicles combustible.
Dave, it's my belief that as the United States goes with this policy, we will follow, because we'll have no choice because of just sheer economy of scale. And as the United States abandons EV mandates, which it has done, and they're not coming back anytime soon, I don't see any way that we can buck that trend and go it our own way in a country of 30 whatever million people we have. I just don't see it, and the geographical sprawl and the challenges that you raise are legit. I mean, there's already capacity issues, and where's the power coming from? For all those reasons, I think that the EV mandates are going to be scrapped, and in a pretty timely fashion.
I think you'll hear that from Mark Carney very soon as well, because he seems to bow to whatever Trump wants to do. I don't think he's got his elbows up much lately, and
no, that's right.
He's got his hands full, but I think you're absolutely right. I agree with you there. 35 possibly, and but a lot's going to have to be done before then with the grid system across this nation and what have you. And so.
Okay, Dave. Appreciate the call, pal. Todd. All right, take care. Cheers. 902-405-6000.
It's going to have to be
Doug, hello.
Hi,
Doug.
System across this nation and what have you.
All right, Doug. I'm going to put you on hold. Listen, I'll take you next. Listen to the phone and not the radio, because there's a delay there. So there's a loop.
I'm not.
Another Doug. Hello, Doug.
Good morning, Todd.
Hi there. Go ahead.
That's right, Doug, I guess. No, I just this decision that the council made on Morris Street is just not right. And I think I really hope that the premier steps in and stops this madness. I think about the hospitals there, the BG and the IWK, and what they serve all of Atlantic Canada, and the fire station that's up in the corner. It wouldn't matter which direction that one way is going to be. It's going to cause trouble for that fire department, especially if it's going down, if they have to answer a call to get down to Water Street or Barron Street. Even to get back to the station, it doesn't seem right to me why this would be allowed to happen,
Yeah, I think that you're going to see this fall, again, strong mayor powers granted, and I think the province is going to step in and get involved with this issue of transportation in HRM. I really believe that.
I think you're right. And, do they take this stuff into consideration? And you had a caller there a little while ago talking about let these councillors that got elected to do the job. But you know what? The damage has already been done if you leave them there for another 4 years. It doesn't make sense to me. Where's the end for this madness, like I say, this cost? It makes no sense to me.
So in your opinion, Doug, you think that council is not making decisions based on logic and being pragmatic? You feel that ideology and personal agendas are at play?
It's got to be. I don't know what else can it be. It's not common sense. It's certainly not. They certainly didn't take those medical institutions into consideration, or the universities and the people downtown. I mean, how's the fire truck going to get down there? Like I said, they were back. They got to get back to the station. It doesn't make sense to me at all. Anyway. That's
okay, Doug. All right. Appreciate the call.
EV goes, their EVs are going to go too, because we got no business case for them here in Canada. If we're building them, we're going to be building for the Americans, and they ain't going to take them.
No, they're not going to take them. That's right. That's right. Okay, Doug. Thanks for the call. 902-405-6000. Let's try Doug again. Hello, Doug.
Hey, how are you today?
I'm well. You?
I could be better. I'd like to talk about.
We all could.
I'd like to talk about the downtown area. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to say a few things, and then you can cut me off. I've been going to the downtown area for over 35 years, okay? The Argyle Street is a madhouse. Sackville Street is a madhouse. There's so much traffic down there on the weekends, you can't move because, I'm going to say this, I'm a taxi driver in Halifax, okay? Argyle Street is closed on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night. Now, I'm an independent driver, meaning I don't work for casino, yellow cab, or the big companies, okay?
Yeah.
Those taxi stands are my living, okay? If I cannot get on those taxi stands, I don't make no money. Now, the city has put on We had 1,500 cabs in the city, or 1,600, something like around there. The Uber people come in here, okay? I don't mind Uber, but the problem I got is the city didn't want to have so many cars on. So now Uber's got over 4,000 drivers registered in Halifax. So that doesn't leave too much competition for the cab drivers. So when you're downtown at Dirty Nelly's or the Carlton, or one of those bars, and you come out, right, there's no cabs here. So you don't have a choice anymore. It's Uber or nothing. Because we can't come and get you because we can't get you.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
They need to address this. And the traffic is Uber. These guys come downtown, Todd, and they hang around down there all night. They park on the sidewalks. They park on the street. It takes you 25 minutes to get from Brunswick Street down to Barrington Street, going down Sackville Street. That's how bad it is. And the police know about it.
Yeah.
I'm talking to constables, and they say, well, the chiefs, they need to do something about it. They need to open those streets up. And it's a party street. The police are down there all the time. They're smoking dope. They're partying. They're drinking in the middle of the street. Never mind the patios. The patios are not even in question. When the street's open, the patios are still there. People still sit there and drink. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Why are those streets closed?
Yeah,
I think my job.
Yeah.
You know, I pay $200 a year for my license. And I am this is my last year, because if this don't change, I'm not working. The only taxi stand I got left is the casino. Scotia Square, with over $100,000 or more dollars come out of there. That stand was there since 1970. The city took that. I don't know why, but they took that from us. It was a 3-car stand. They took that. They took the Lord Nelson stand, which was there from the 50s. All the hotel across the street to Nelson, all the airports and that used to come out of there. The connoisseur would come out, the bellboy, yell across the street. We get the airport gone. Now Uber gets all that. They get all lots. They get all the park lane. They get all Scotia Square. We got nothing. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
For nothing.
Yeah.
I'm paying them for nothing, Todd. And I hope they're listening. Who's ever in charge of the downtown, they got to fix this, man. It's not right. There's too many Ubers. They should have just let 1,000 cars in, and they're still registering people. I know, because I know a guy that works up there, and there's over 4,000. Now, that's not fair. They need to cut that back to like, if you're going to put Uber in, bring in 500 or 600 more cars. That's it. Cut the rest, and then if somebody quits, you put another guy in there. But the way it is right now, the public got no choice for taxis. It's Uber or nothing.
Interesting,
and the
Doug.
people, and I got to say this about the people of Halifax, shame on you, because you're giving all your money to the Americans. It's an American company. It's an American company, and you're not supporting the local cab drivers. That is terrible. Absolutely terrible. Shame on all of you. That's all I got to say.
Okay,
Todd.
Doug. All right. Thanks for the call. I think you make some good points. Thanks for the call, pal. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls. Way to reach us, 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. James, hello.
Hi, Todd. I'm calling about Nova Scotia Power. I've called before on this topic. They are struggling lately, as many people may well know, but I thought it's worth documenting. There's an article in the Chronicle Herald today that their electronic meter reading system has totally broken down. And so now they're sending out people to read your meter on foot, as the headline says. The same article says that they've now divulged that the data leak that was previously, the hacking leak that was previously disclosed, could include name, phone number, email address, mailing address, etc., date of birth, driver's license number, the list goes on. It's incredible. So we've all been offered 5 years of, credit monitoring, but meanwhile, the bad guys have perhaps all of the above information. In addition, and then I will get to my point, article, CBC website today, recent Nova Scotia The court decision, Nova Scotia Power fined close $96,250 due to a occupational health and safety violation a few years ago. Bottom line, this is not a well-run, privately owned, highly profitable, but publicly regulated corporation. I think it's time for a public inquiry or something similar.
Yeah, for sure. I think that there's a lot of questions when it comes to Nova Scotia Power, and the fact that they get a guaranteed return of investment for the shareholders built right into their business model, in which ratepayers are on the hook for. I think that's the start of the problem right there, in my opinion.
I agree completely. That's why I said highly profitable. I think it's 9.25%. I stand to be corrected.
Yeah, it's in the vicinity of 10% that they're guaranteed to get, which comes right out of ratepayers' pockets every time.
Yep.
So instead of investing in the infrastructure and fixing the problems, as you're pointing out, and James, it's only the demand on power is only going to increase as we grow in population. So the problems aren't going to go away.
No, and again, your previous conversation, yes. And of course, they have not proven themselves reliable necessarily to increase the supply as appropriate, but also in the winter, fall and winter, we have way too many power outages.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, James, thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Carl, hello.
How you doing this morning?
I'm well, you?
Oh, pretty good. Just wanted to call about the EV thing. My part on it is a lot of people in Nova Scotia struggle to survive with the cost of living now. And those people, and I'm included with them, there's no way that I'd ever be able to afford an EV vehicle, and I'm sure there's many others that can't either. I just don't think the infrastructure is there. I don't think that the average person can afford these vehicles. Nova Scotia, we're getting hurricanes. I remember the last one or the one before that, 2 weeks we didn't have power for in my community. How are we supposed to electrify these vehicles if we don't have any power in the first place? Basically, that's my thing. It's just the cost. People have enough time to struggle with driving gas vehicles, let alone EVs. Anyway, that's basically my statement.
Okay, Carl, appreciate it. Take care. Thanks. 902-405-6000. Hello, Bill.
Hi, Todd. My old rant each year why we don't have a flag in the public gardens on the bandstand. I went so far as to design the flag incorporating about 9 scenes of the public gardens, which I felt wouldn't offend anybody, but that didn't go anywhere either. I can't believe it. It just keeps going from year to year, no flag. I mean, all the people go in the public garden, look up at the bandstand. This is like over 100 years this flag's been there. What do you make of this one?
Well, who makes that decision? Who has the final say over that?
Well, I would presume it's the city.
Is there not a committee or something like that oversees public gardens, or is there not some group?
Well, I'm on a Friends of the Public Gardens thing there, but I don't think they make the decision. I mean, I wish everybody going to the public garden would look up and see it and see what the problem is. I mean, it's the other thing too, Todd. While I'm at it, it's a shame we can't get more music through the week, like in the afternoons there. It's a Sunday thing pretty well, the odd thing at night. But it's a shame you could get, I'm sure there's all kinds of bands, music people would like to practice there. Even if you more to go in there a freebie, but you get your music. So there's that there. There's another thing there too, Todd, that's interesting. You guys, I think you could, somebody gets onto this one here about the big trees, some kind of a thing where if you donate a certain amount, before you get a little tag there that shows you're helping the cause, and the money could go to some good causes in the public gardens. By the way, another little short one, talking about that parking situation at the World Trade Center. I experienced that with a cab driver. I could only go so far. I had to get out and walk quite a little distance to get to it. Then I found that when I was leaving, the lady inside the World Trade Center directed me to there's an upper parking place there in the World Trade Center where you can come in. I remember the next time I came down, we drove right down in there. So you might want to look at that one there. Anybody using the World Trade Center concerned about the parking thing and walking. There is another level up above that can be used and would do the job.
Okay, Bill.
How you doing? You okay now?
I'm okay. Thanks as always.
Thanks.
Appreciate your ideas, Bill. Always great.
Thanks.
All right, take care. Bruce, quickly if you can.
Oh, hi. I was listening to the thing yesterday about making Moore Street one way, but it made me think about how HRN doesn't really pay a lot of attention to providing access to the port with the road construction problems and that sort of thing. And plus, I think there's a lot of people moving into the downtown lately who don't even know that we have a busy seaport there, so they're wondering why there's all this truck traffic and foghorns and things like that. It's always been a pet peeve of mine, and I used to talk to Rick about it different times. So, they need to get serious about what to do with Hollow Street and Water Street and the north end of Barrington. It should be 4 lanes all the way to the bridge. I don't know why they didn't do that stuff when they built the bridge. But anyway, we might hear some more about it from other people.
Okay, Bruce, appreciate your call. Thanks so much. Take care. All right, thanks for the call to everybody. We appreciate it. Didn't get to all of you for that. I apologize. We will open the phone lines again tomorrow between 11 and 12. A federal government program designed during the pandemic to compensate people who have been seriously and permanently injured by vaccines is failing and a breach of trust, according to some. We'll discuss this when we come back. This story on the Global News website this week, a federal government program designed during the pandemic to compensate people who have been seriously and permanently injured by vaccines is failing and a breach of trust, according to opposition parties. Joining me to discuss all of this is Kerry Bowman with the University of Toronto. Kerry, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time.
Happy to do so.
All right, so there's a lot of information here that people need to know about. So if you could kind of lay the groundwork for this story and give everybody a little history lesson on this, if you will, please.
Yeah, so, we always knew that, and, I'm not speaking as a physician. I'm a medical ethicist, so I'm not going to go at this from a completely medical point of view. But here's the basic facts. We always knew with any vaccine that there's this really, really small, minuscule amount of people that could potentially be harmed. And no matter how small that is, it's absolute reality for the people that it does happen to. And so COVID was no different than that. And we all remember the pandemic, I'm sure. Everyone listening does. It wasn't that long ago. So these people, in fact, were injured. There was, at least one death, maybe more. And some of them have permanent injuries. Now, so what happened was our government was able to and willing to take responsibility for that, to investigate that, find out if claims were valid, and then offer support, compensation, whatever people were going to need for that. But our government, our Ottawa government, did what they so often do. They contracted out to another agency. And the allegations are that agency was absolutely not up to the task at all. The allegations are that there was tremendously unprofessional behavior with the staff of that agency, and that it drifted and drifted and drifted. And many people did not, get a clear response, or did not have a response in a timely manner, or had a response that was really inadequate to the injury that they received. So, and I'm quite amazed. I'll speak honestly. I'm as pro-vaccine as a person could be, by the way. But I would argue we owe the vaccine injured a lot. When you look at, when you ask people why they got vaccinated, many will say they didn't want to get sick. But
particularly with younger people, young, healthy people. And that's often where the injuries were, by the way. It wasn't older people. It was often younger people. And I saw this, with my students. I teach at the University of Toronto. The thinking was they're doing it because it's the right thing to do for society, right? It's not just about them. It's the big picture of dealing with this pandemic. So it really, for a lot of people, was an act of altruism. And some of those people were really injured. So I think we should be moving anything we can move to help and support those people. And we're hearing from this story, which, by the way, is not getting very much attention at all. Yeah. Very little, very, very little.
Why do you think that is? First, why do you think that is, Kerry?
I think it is because vaccines have become so politicized and so toxic, and we're really getting the pushback and the spillover from south of the border in the United States. People are afraid to even comment on this. They don't want to be interviewed. They don't want to talk about it. And I think a lot of people don't even want to think about the fact that there are vaccine-injured people in this country. And, we knew this was coming. This isn't a surprise. And you're talking about, I don't remember the numbers, but it's way less than 1%, like this tiny little amount. But, that means nothing if it's happened to them. That means, it doesn't matter what the numbers are. So I think it's really, really horrible. And I would argue there's big ethical problems with the fact that we're not really moving to support these people. And look, causation, correlation, these are tough issues. The other problem with the process was a lack of transparency. So if a person was refused support because perhaps they're saying we can't prove it was related to the vaccine, they need to know what the process was. And they really didn't know that. They don't even know who the doctors involved were. That's all blinded. Quebec, the province of Quebec, does it quite differently, but in which you do know. So I would argue you need transparency. And, causation, correlation, this is tough because it is possible that somebody could have become very seriously ill right after a vaccination and it's not related. I'm not saying that's the case. I have no idea. But, you have to really dig to find out if there's a correlation. And it's not easy from everything I understand about it.
Okay, the company that this was outsourced to, did they have the qualifications to do this type of work?
Apparently, absolutely not, and absolutely not. And many people were from the tech industry, and they were from various industries that are not even really healthcare related. They tried to change that gap later on, but remember, most of this is allegation. Not just, I work not just in universities, but also in the Toronto teaching hospitals. And I would say with a mandate like the vaccine injured, you need some of your most competent, clever healthcare workers, not just for the physical, but the emotional, the psychological. You really need some really, really good healthcare workers on those teams. This is hard work. And that doesn't seem to be at all what happened. And so I really think our government has to take some responsibility. But, this story is not getting much attention at all. Now, you could say it's the month of July and you know what Canadians are like in July. But still, it's a serious situation.
Okay, how much, when you talk injuries, can you set how bad are some of these injuries?
Death, in certainly in one case, Guillain-Barré, which is a paralysis, which sometimes it can be a very serious paralysis to the point where you can't breathe and you end up on life support or something of that nature. Some of those, the abbreviation is GBS. Some of those GBS cases resolve. Some do not. I don't know the whole profile of all of the cases, but there's still. If I remember correct, and nobody should quote me on this, I think they're reviewing about 3,000 cases. But if you're not sure of that number, look it up because I'm not absolutely positive. But I think that's the range we're in, and it's taking too much time. Now, it seems to me Ottawa often farms these things out. I don't know why. I don't know why, but this is not the first time contracting out in our capital has not gone well. So I would think that needs a closer examination as well.
Is there a burden of proof issue here or a challenge when it comes to the legality of this, or no?
Well, here's the thing: is we're not that sure, and I would think, don't accept every single case. I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is they should really lean towards if you can't 100% be sure, but all indications are it looks like it's likely. I would argue they should lean towards absolute compensation for that, because otherwise you could walk away from almost every single case, from what I can see anyway. So that could be part of it. And, I'm hoping we'll all have a lot more information on how this goes and what's going to happen next. But so far, we're not getting a lot of response from what I can see. Maybe, I don't know. We shouldn't have to wait for Labor Day to get a response on this.
Yeah. Well, is there a budget allocation for this?
There is a budget allocation, and a lot of the budget allocation, allegedly, notice how I keep using that word, but allegedly most of the budget allocation went to overhead and not compensation.
Wow.
So that would be the agency that was contracted out. Most of it went to overhead. And wow, that does not sound good.
No.
So, the whole thing needs a much deeper examination. I think we'd all like to imagine this never happened, but it did. And I again, and I'm purposely repeating myself here, we owe those people a lot. We really do.
Yeah, the numbers were about 11,702 reports of serious or adverse events following the vaccinations. And that equates to 0.011% of the total doses administered. But to your point, if you're one of those people, then you deserve to be compensated, and it shouldn't be a statistical numbers game as to why it doesn't get the traction that it should.
No, that's exactly my point. And then I think out of that large number you quoted, there's still something about, I think they've earmarked about 3,000 for a much deeper examination. But anyway, I would suggest anyone that they look this up to get the numbers exactly right. But yeah, so we use terms like minuscule. I think I used it, vanishingly small. Mm-hmm. But that means nothing if your life that has happened to you. That means nothing. You've really got to help these people, and I hope we will.
Okay, so opposition MPs are pushing this, but it really falls upon the government of the day and Mark Carney to do something about this. And what would be the reason why they wouldn't? Is it just because a sheer volume of other things to deal with, or is it inherently controversial, or what are the reasons fundamentally why this would not be addressed?
Well, I speculate, but what I speculate, and in fairness, our prime minister has his hands full with this nightmare with the United States. Yeah. But hands full or not, you've got to deal with whatever comes up. So it's a combination of we're very distracted with the international problems and the situation we're in with the United States. But more than that, I speculate here that no politician wants their name associated with anything to do with vaccines. It's considered toxic. It's considered, a political suicide. And anyone that picks up this cause could be seen as being anti-vax. I'm not anti-vax. And look, the people that were injured are not anti-vax. If they were anti-vax, they wouldn't have been vaccinated. Mm. They were vaccinated. Mm-hmm. So, this isn't an anti-vax argument. No, it will be for some people, and I accept that. That's fine. But it's not necessarily an anti-vax argument. I just think, if you look at what's going on south of the border with, RFK Jr. and the situation there, and the Americans just really, really walking away from vaccines in a big way, I think people are really frightened to even touch this.
This isn't going to help, obviously, right?
No, it doesn't help at all. Yeah. But, the U.S. is a separate country, and we need to do what we believe is right. And we really owe these people all the support we can give them.
Okay, Kerry, listen, very interesting. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Very welcome. Take care.
All right, take care. Now. Kerry Bowman, bioethicist with the University of Toronto. Nearly 700,000 Canadian children rely on food banks. We'll discuss this when we come back. Food Banks Canada estimates that roughly 1 in 3 people who rely on Canadian food banks are children, almost 700,000 children every month. Aaron Filey-Ranecki joins us, Chief Development and Partnership Officer at Food Banks Canada. Aaron, thanks for joining the show.
Thank you so much for having me on.
All right, so that number is sobering to say the least, right?
Yeah, I've been working at Food Banks Canada for about 12 years now, and it never gets easier for me to say.
Is that the highest it's been since you've been there? I would hope that it is, but probably not.
So actually, it's a stubborn number. So in terms of number of visits, yes. So 2 million visits are made to food banks each and every month in this country, and that's the highest that we've ever seen. But that percentage, that sort of 1 in 3, has been a pretty stubborn number that has been around for quite a while. So traditionally, yeah, about 1 in 3 people using a food bank are children.
Okay, so what are the core issues here? What's going on?
So it's a variety of things. Generally speaking, though, it all comes down to people don't have enough income to cover their basic cost of living. So, we are in the midst of a housing crisis. We saw inflation take the cost of everyday goods and put them out of the reach of so many people. And we're talking about people who, at one point in time were able to patch things together. They could go to the grocery store, maybe not necessarily pick up everything that they wanted from the shelves, but now they're actually having to make really tough choices and head down to the local food bank to make sure that there's food on the table.
Okay, so when it comes to socioeconomics, that's at play, I'm sure, right? Obviously.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, right now, we are seeing, the highest level of food bank usage in our history. And unfortunately, as we hear anecdotally from across the country, unfortunately, we don't think that number is going down anytime soon. And it is a challenge every day. Food banks across this country are working really hard to make sure that anybody that comes to their doors has access to the food they need. But we also know that that's getting harder. And 30% of food banks actually weren't able to meet demand last year. So that's really keeping us up at night.
Yeah, because of inflation and people are donating less, and it just builds, it just feeds itself, right? Pardon the pun.
Yeah, I mean, in reality, food banks are unfortunately in a position where when the highest demand for their services happen when there's the least capacity in the community to support them.
Right.
Now, I know across the country, Canadians across this country have continued to be incredibly generous and we still see that, but people are stretched and they're having to make really tough decisions.
Yeah, for sure. And people using food banks for the first time in their lives, nobody ever wants to use a food bank, obviously, but I guess it's a difficult move for some people to break that barrier and to admit that they need the help, although they certainly should, and there's no shame in it. But if that's at play, right? I'm sure that that's a big step for some to go to a food bank for the first time in their lives.
Yeah, we actually did a study recently, and it said one of the biggest barriers to somebody accessing a food bank is the feeling that they don't deserve it as much as somebody else. So there is a lot of stigma and a shame associated with what they shouldn't be, because when you walk to the door of a food bank, you're going to meet somebody who's just there to help, somebody who wants to make sure that you have what you need so you can get on with doing all the rest of the things in your life that are so important. But it is a tough go, and we are seeing now one of the fastest growing demographics of people that are entering the doors of food banks are people that are actually fully employed. Wow.
And volunteers can play a big role in helping, obviously, food banks.
Yeah, but the food bank network is powered by volunteers. Every day across this country, tens of thousands of people walk into their local food bank and stock shelves and sort donations and meet with clients. And we couldn't do this work without the care of all these people in every community across the country.
Okay, Erin, appreciate your time. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you so much.
All right, take care. Erin Filey-Renecki, Chief Development and Partnership Officer at Food Banks Canada. And as you can imagine, it'd be tough. I can honestly tell you that I've had the good fortune in my life to never have used a food bank. And I don't say that for any other reason other than I feel fortunate. And I can understand and empathize with some people that would be a tough thing to do. But there shouldn't be a stigma because it can happen to anybody. And we're seeing day after day, week after week, the amount of people impacted by poverty and in food insecurity is growing. And later in the next segment, we're going to chat with Brendan Maguire, Education and Early Childhood Development Minister, the school lunch program, and it dovetails nicely into this conversation. But again, there's no shame, and there should not be a stigma. But I understand why for some people that's a barrier. I do get it, and it could happen to anybody. Really, it could. We're all vulnerable. This story, we'll talk about it probably tomorrow when I chat with Tim Powers, and perhaps it's something that we'll get into with the union as well. The Canadian government is launching a new review in an effort to cut red tape across the public service. The Treasury Board expects cabinet ministers to create reports on next steps for cutting regulation within 60 days. Ministers have asked to find savings of 7.5% in their budget starting in the fiscal 2026 year. That will rise over the following 2 years. It comes as Prime Minister Mark Carney has pledged to balance the operating side of Ottawa's budget in the coming years, even as he commits to rapidly increase defense spending to meet NATO targets. So again, the cuts have to come from somewhere, folks. And if you're going to increase spending on defense, which this government is committed to do so, and Mark Carney appears as though he's going to follow through with, well, there's only so much revenue, and that'll result in needed cuts elsewhere. And of course, the union will balk against it as they always do. And look, I get it; it's turf protection, and that's their job to do so. And if I worked for the public service, I'd be concerned as well. But it doesn't mean that the cut shouldn't happen. And I think probably overdue. When you look at it, it's tough. I don't like to see anybody lose their job, folks. I don't. I truly don't. But when all is said and done, you have to justify the spending and you have to get a return on investment when it comes to public sector spending. I know that terminology isn't in vogue, and the unions would say that that's not a good measuring stick, but I think that it's appropriate at some point. Again, we'll talk about this tomorrow with Tim Powers, and perhaps we'll open the phone lines and I'll throw it out there as well for you to weigh in on, because it's gonna be a big issue, folks. It's gonna be a big battle with the public sector for sure. Speaking of Brendan Maguire joins the show when we come back. All right, millions of lunches served in first year of Nova Scotia school lunch program. Joining us to discuss this is Brendan Maguire, Education and Early Childhood Development Minister. Brendan, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate it, my friend.
Anytime, Todd. How you doing?
I'm well, you?
Not too bad. Summer's here.
I know. So summer's here, and but the fall school is coming right around the corner, and you want to expand this millions of lunch served in the first year, but it's going to expand. Is that correct?
Yeah. So last year we served over 4.7 million lunches to students across the province, and next year, this coming fall, that was just elementary age students, and next year we'll be in the junior high school. So more than 100,000 students across Nova Scotia will be able to get a healthy lunch every day.
All right. What's the budget for this?
I don't have that exact number. I should have that off the top of my head, but what I can tell you, what I keep saying to people is it's less about the financial implications, and it's more about the social impacts on our schools and our children. We do know before the lunch program, there were a lot of kids. Unfortunately, there was a lot of kids in our schools that went without lunch every day. And we know that leads to a bad learning environment. It's hard to learn when you're hungry. So I say to people all the time, like, this is less about the money we're spending. Like, this is an investment in our children in the future.
Is there any help from the federal government, or is this all provincial money?
There is some, but most of the money is coming from the provincial government.
Okay, so when it comes to who gets the lunch, I suppose it has to be available to everybody, or that's the model, right? In order to make it equitable and without setting up barriers or stigma or anything like that. That's part of the model, is it?
Yeah, so it was available to all elementary school kids last year, and it'll be elementary, junior high, and then the rollout will go to high school. You hit the nail on the head, Todd. Like, we want to make sure that everybody's eligible for this. We didn't want stigma around kids that maybe don't have a healthy lunch or don't come to school with lunch. So it's available to everybody, and again, like 4.7 million lunches. It's been really successful.
Yeah, and what about what do kids like? What are kids eating the most?
That is a good question. As you know, I have 3 children, and all kids like different things, and so this is a new program, and we really took some time to listen to the parents and the school staff and the kids. And we actually are making some adjustments to the menu, and I'll break it here for the first time. We are adding healthy chicken nuggets and potato wedges to the lunch menu and pancakes to the lunch menu, among other things. But what we do know is that these have all been tested by children, and the new items that are coming in have been a huge hit in our test groups. So they can expect some baked healthy chicken nuggets, potato wedges, and pancakes at least in the upcoming fall.
Okay, and what's when it hits its full scale? Will it be through every child, K to 12?
Yeah, it'll be through pre-primary to 12. This is it's a pay what you can system. So when it comes to the financial side of it, if whatever you can pay. We encourage people to do it, but that doesn't mean you have to, if you can't afford anything, then you don't pay. But, it is going to be for every student. And, there were some things we heard from kids last year, which is, around the packaging and delivery. And so we're working on the delivery and the service standards so that the food gets there before lunch and it stays warm, and it's warm when the kids have it. And the packaging is better. And, some of the things we heard was like they wanted improvements to the pizza. And so all that stuff is being worked on, and we should see, better lunch program. But again, like it's a big lift, and the staff and the government has done a great job. And I know that we'll continue to tweak it to make sure that it's as successful as possible.
Is it locally contracted? Who's doing the contract?
Yeah, there's a lot of local vendors that are involved. So we're just going through again for next year. But I can tell you, I've visited some of these kitchens personally. The food is great, but it's all local stuff and local vendors, and we're heavily relying on local businesses in Nova Scotia.
Okay, so if people want to know more about it, or if they're curious about what's next or what schools are going to be eligible, is there a website, or can they check it out online?
Yeah, they can go to the Department of Education website. The information will be up there. And if they have any questions, the department has an email. I have an email address. They can send that to the ministerial email address, and we do our absolute best to get back to people. And I just, I will say that, we've heard a lot of positive feedback from staff and teachers on the fact that some of the kids that, are sitting in class hungry are no longer sitting in class hungry. And, it makes a big, big difference in kids' lives.
Hey, Brendan, appreciate it. Thanks.
No problem, Todd. You have a great summer.
All right, take care. Brendan Maguire, Education and Early Childhood Development Minister. This story, Nova Scotia universities are planning cuts, program reviews, and tuition increases to grapple with budget shortfalls over the coming year. The economic issues come amid a major drop in international student enrollment and a government-mandated tuition freeze for some students. Dalhousie University is predicting a $20.6 million deficit. $20.6 million, folks. That is a massive hole. Cape Breton University, $6.8 million deficit. Acadia University, St. Mary's Universities are expecting $2.8 million deficits. Just massive, massive holes. We're going to talk to Peter Halpin about all this tomorrow on the show. And we'll get his take on this. Because it's look, folks, something obviously has to be done. What, I don't know. I don't know how they're going to grapple with this fiscal challenge. But it's in serious need of a revisit, I would dare say. And dovetailing into that, the Premier needs to tell universities not to target low-paid workers to balance their budgets. We'll talk about this with the NSGEU president when we come back. The Nova Scotia Government and General Employees Union is raising concerns that the recent contracting out of food services by the Nova Scotia Community College to a private American company forcing 27 people out of work will open the floodgates for other universities to balance their budgets on the backs of some of the lowest paid and most vulnerable workers in the post-secondary sector. Joining us to discuss all of this is the president of the NSGEU, Sandra Mullen. Sandra, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time, of course.
Thanks for the call, Todd.
All right, so look, NSCC had an $800,000 budget deficit that they were dealing with, and how much savings are they going to get out of this? Do we know that?
Well, they're telling us they're going to save $800,000. So are they balancing the books on the backs of these lowest paid employees in some cases? Some of these folks are making just minimum wage, just over. However, the wages that these folks did make included pension and benefits. So in some of these, they were some good paying jobs across the province. In some rural areas, these folks have been working, some of them 27 years and more, in these campuses, doing a job they enjoyed, working with students, working with these folks throughout the years, and they did not deserve to have the books balanced on their backs when they're not at the table doing the planning.
So they were direct employees of the college, is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, all right. So contracting this out to save $800,000, and I guess adding salt to the wound is the fact that it's an American company, which is contradictory to what Tim Houston has talked about with his elbows up routine that espoused.
Exactly. That's a huge concern, as well as the fact that they're turning their back on, they already offer one of the only culinary programs in this province. And they're turning out students into the food service industry, yet what kind of message is that giving to folks to say we don't value the work that they're doing? So those are certainly some highlighted concerns.
Okay, so how many other of your members are working in this sector? Like food services for universities or post-secondary?
Well, when you look across the province, we have a number working in healthcare, working in post-secondary,
sure.
Doing the work that is required. And we know that, in other industries, the food service that they provide, I don't believe that in post-secondary it's about making any money. We look at the fact that even to be, I don't believe that they're losing money. You don't need to make a profit on the backs of these students. They're there to provide food, and in some cases, we've got food service providers in those post-secondary sites that were preparing food for the on-site daycares. So those are preparing the food for the children being cared for in those daycare centers. It's a vital part of making those communities work. We know we have daycares on site at many of the campuses, and that is where that food comes from. So it's a very important part of the work that are not only the work that our members do, but the services that the folks require.
All right, and I'm sure there'll be expenses when it comes to some of these tenured workers have been working for the college for probably decades, right?
Sure. And so collective language or collective agreement language is assisting in this transition. So that costs money, of course. Mm-hmm. And, it's just unfortunate that these folks are losing what was a good paying job because of its benefits and pension. And we know today that those are very important things to members working across the province and across the country. So it is a straight hourly wage that the other organization is going to offer them, but no pension and benefits.
Okay, so the health authority, similar setup, is it the scenario that the government could arbitrarily just decide to contract this out?
We fight with the employer all the time to ensure that food services remain something that is provided by our members, and of course, and when you look at healthcare, nutritious food is a very important part of recovery for these folks who are in facilities, in hospitals, and so there's extra importance there to keep those services from our, provided by our members. But this is just taking and cutting the folks who are not sitting at that table when looking at budgets in that post-secondary institution.
How does an American company deliver food services with that much less money? I don't understand how it can operate and be profitable and deliver quality food.
It's quite perplexing when you look at that exact issue. Information just doesn't jive.
Yeah, for sure. So the American company, they must hire locally, though, obviously.
They're interested in speaking with our members who have been working there. So there are folks who have decided to, have to decide by end of day tomorrow, whether they are going to put their name forward to take, severance and leave, or are they going to apply to work there, continue working there, but with a lesser hourly wage and no benefits, no pension.
Well, you mentioned that the fact that they're already making basically minimum wage, so there's nowhere to go when it comes to that. It would be the benefits that would be cut. Correct?
That's absolutely true. Some of them are as low as minimum, just over minimum wage, to as high as $25 an hour. And again, if it's the same hourly wage but no pension and benefits, there's quite a difference.
Okay, what do you say to the person that's listening out there right now that says this is just turf protection, this is the union protecting its members, which look, that's your job, we get it, but some people might be listening out there saying if there's savings to be had, then universities are bleeding money, and post-secondary institutions are bleeding money, and the healthcare authority is looking to trim and cut and make savings anywhere they can find it, then so be it. What do you say to that person that's listening that has that opinion?
I think we have to be very cautious of when we hear about cuts being made on the backs of folks who are their neighbors, and I don't believe anyone is safe that if any employer is looking to privatize, that we have to look at the why, and are these folks at the table when making those decisions, and is there anywhere else that there can be cuts? And we all know that there's extra levels of management within these organizations, and when you can shuffle around folks and who they are supervising, and there's savings to be made elsewhere other than cutting those jobs that are not at the table when it comes to talking about these big budgets.
For sure. How about when it comes to members, who else might be vulnerable? What other groups might be vulnerable that are under your union umbrella?
Well, I think everybody has some vulnerability here. And, it's absolutely imperative that we keep on top of where is this a threat of privatization. We've seen that for years, where whether it's a P3 project where, they offload the responsibilities, but it's still a cost to government, and it's still going to be a cost to NSCC to deliver this food service through another contract. There has to be more accountability on these budget processes with our post-secondary. They get funding, of course, from government, and whether it's in post-secondary, government, or healthcare, or any other industry, we have to take a serious look at where those budgets are going to be balanced and ensure that the right folks are taking a look at it. But we've seen it many times where folks who are decision makers, they're not likely to cut their own position.
Yeah, that's for sure. Okay, Sandra, listen, I appreciate your time. Thanks for doing this. I know it's tough news, and I feel badly for those people impacted. Nobody never like to see anybody lose a job. That's for sure. It's tough.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you, Todd.
Okay, take care. Sandra Mullen, president of the NSGEU. And again, folks, look, it's difficult to see anybody lose a job. I've been there. Believe me, I know what it feels like, and it's not easy. That said, though, I get that it's government's job to be fiscal stewards and proper stewards of the public purse, and that's always a balance. But look, it's tough. It is, and I get that people who are anti-union and would be listening and say, "Too bad." That's the fiscal reality that you have to deal with. But again, I feel for the people first and foremost that are impacted by this. I do. But I understand conversely that government has a role in trying to balance the books, and I understand that. So difficult conversation, difficult decisions for sure. I'm glad I don't have to make them. A new report says Halifax has some of the highest child care costs among major Canadian cities. More bad news for HRM. The Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives says the median fee for daycare in Halifax is $24 a day per child as of April, making the city the sixth most expensive for child care out of 35 major cities in the country. Halifax's median daycare fees were more expensive than those in Toronto, Oakville, Ottawa, and all other Atlantic cities that were studied to examine progress on hitting the federal government's target of having child care costs an average of $10 a day. Kenya Thompson with Child Care Nova Scotia says the province needs to significantly invest to subsidize fees and ensure parents with young children remain in the workforce. So again, more bad news for HRM. It's just seemingly, well, we talked about affordability a lot this week, and Claudia Chender, of course, has been on top of this, as you might expect the opposition leader to be when it comes to affordability or lack thereof. And again, reports this week, and we talked a lot about it, that we're basically on par with Toronto when it comes to how much it costs to live in this city. And then you compound that with this report and the cost of living, and it just seems to be more and more troubling news for HRM. Look, folks, I love the city, as we all do. Most of us certainly do, but you have to be able to have a decent ambition of being able to thrive and not just survive. And when you're just in survival mode, that's a tough way to go. That's a tough way to live. And unfortunately, for too many of you out there, that's what you're living with right now. And it's tough for sure. Anyway. Thanks so much for tuning in and listening, everybody. We appreciate it very much. We will be back tomorrow. I'd like to thank Blake Priddle on the other side of the glass. Sat in for Vanessa today, did a fine job. And as mentioned, we're back tomorrow at 10 o'clock. See you then.